Hello, this is ADHD Chat, and I'm Dr. Jen Grasp. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, the parent of a couple of ADHD kids, and this show is trying to make the world a little safer for ADHDers. I've been doing a few shows. This will be the third or the fourth one on women and girls and ADHD. As I've said a couple of times already, but it's worth repeating. We don't know as much about ADHD in women and girls as we do in males and boys. Frankly, we know more about young males than we do about people who are a little older. But understand, when ADHD first was out, when it was first diagnosed, it wasn't ADHD or ADD. It was rejection. No, I'm sorry, wrong. It was hyperactive reaction of childhood, which implied that both it was hyperactive and that it was something that you probably grew out of. So it's a very poor name. It shows that we didn't know a lot. And also, by the way, when you start talking about hyperactivity, you're mostly talking about males, boys and men, not girls. Matter of fact, most of the research is about men and boys. And for a long time, it was thought that ADHD was something that only happened to males. And still about half as many women and girls are diagnosed with ADHD as men and boys. And, frankly, all the diagnostic criteria, when you look it up in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, it's all based on men and boys. So little girls frequently are ignored as terms of diagnoses because, frankly, they don't meet that criteria as well. They have some of the signs for sure. Mostly it's inattentive type of diagnosis of ADHD, but it is still, we don't know exactly because the research has just never been done. There are many folks that are trying to catch up with all this, but still we look and we get that more than half of the diagnostic criteria have to do with hyperactivity and so on. So anyway, it's we're starting to catch up a little bit, but there are still a lot of people who have gone through a long, full life and never even considered the possibility that they might have ADHD because they're not hyperactive. Okay, so, and girls tend to sit quietly and daydream as probably their most obvious characteristic or symptom, if you will, in a classroom. And, of course, a teacher, if she's not causing any trouble, will just, and Billy, meanwhile, is throwing chalk at the blackboard, or, boy, did I just date myself at the whiteboard? Anyway, and you're just, it's not the same degree of difficulty for a teacher. So, but, the child is not going to be diagnosed, referred for evaluation, any of those things that happen to your hyperactive young men. And girls also are expected to have a higher level of decorum than little boys, Go get them, son, that kind of stuff. Girls don't get that very often. Not sure with the growth of women's athletics if that's going to change a bit, but right now it's not that way. Uh, I'm old enough that I remember when girls played half court basketball. They couldn't dribble the entire length of the floor, which made for a really boring game to watch. But when we're talking about girls being diagnosed, we have a lot of troubles. And in spite of the fact that when estrogen starts to kick in, they have more troubles with like rejection sensitive dysphoria than males do. And in spite of that, uh, they tend to, the strategy is what's called masking. Now, masking, pretty obvious. Basically you're covering up, pretending that you're not really feeling that rejected, or you're not really feeling like nobody loves you, or you're not really feeling like nobody likes you, or nobody wants to be your friend, and all that stuff. But you're pretending, okay? Uh, Different traits, different behaviors. You're pretending that everything's okay, all's right with me, and that's it's like you're putting on like you're wearing a mask. That's why masking comes. The problem, and there are a lot of problems with that. One thing, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to live like that. It takes a lot of effort and strength to pretend that you're happy when your whole world is crumbling apart. Uh, that's one of the things that makes almost any emotional condition worse, is pretending that it's not there. If you deal with it, then you get a better chance, and that's basically what therapy does for you. Is you deal with it and get over it. But and so you're going to pretend that everything's okay. You're not going to show anybody that there are problems. Uh, Obviously, you won't get any help, and just as obviously, you'll lose track of yourself. What am I really? What do I really feel? It gets confusing. Uh, and one of the big things is it drains the heck out of you. Pretending everything's all right when it's really crumbling down around you, your world is falling apart. You got no friends, you're lonely, you hate school, you're not living up to your potential in school, all those sorts of things. It takes you a lot of energy to pretend like nothing's wrong. And, usually what you get is they make it through the school day, and then they get home, and the world, the mess comes down a little bit. But anyway, so it's emotionally draining. It makes it hard to form real relationships when nobody knows who you really are, and it's it's a very, very uncomfortable way to be. You will. The other thing is that we know from a lot of different treatment groups in the world, that pretending nothing's wrong when something's really wrong increases things like crazy. I mean, I used to work with a lot of first responders, pilots, firemen, policemen, some combat troops. When they pretend, they just saw their buddy blown up, or one of their friends flew as if whatever it is nowadays into the ground, and they're pretending there's nothing wrong. I'm okay. I can handle it. That just makes it worse. And it builds up and builds up and builds up, and sometimes it takes years, but then when it does, it really blows up, and then you've got a problem. So that's a huge issue. That's a huge, huge issue for all of this stuff. And it's and it's also harder to work with if you're a therapist or a coach, if they're trying to pretend that nothing's wrong, and you got an inkling that there is a whole bunch wrong, it takes a lot to um, provide adequate treatment. "Oh, nothing wrong with me," and then they do that all the time. And so things aren't working out well. You have no friends. You're lonely. Uh, you're not doing as well as you could in school. School's boring, but you're not going to throw a piffy like your like your brother probably would. And the emotional stuff builds up. You get more and more. Well, there are different directions you can go. You get more and more depressed. You get more and more anxious. Uh, After a while, you start even thinking about hurting yourself. Uh, and then we've got a real mess on our hands. So, and I think I mentioned, but we'll do it again, that especially when menses start, then that as that fluctuates, you get more and more emotional. Third week or so of the menstrual cycle, estrogen has basically depleted your dopamine down to a very little anyway. And dopamine is the one that's the feel good, feel motivated, want to do stuff. And when you delete that, that leads to a lot of irritability and, um, well, just difficulties putting on a good face. And that is when self-harming becomes a real issue. Uh, a lot of girls with ADHD are cutters. If you're familiar with that, where they take a knife and start cutting lines in their arm. Um, and then the ones I've worked with have usually said, I just wanted to feel something. Yeah, okay. Um, but it's nothing to fool around with. It's nothing that we need to just say, oh, that's not a big deal. It is a big deal. And it is uh, a little scary when it gets past a certain point. Uh, Obviously, as a parent, you need to be doing a lot of work with encouraging, um, whether we can have an open discourse on emotions and that sort of stuff, and that uh, and again, this is not to put it all on the parents, but the way I was raised, a lot of the behaviors that you have with ADHD would have been severely punished. Okay, and I'm not saying that was right. That's just the way it was for me and pretty much every other kid of my generation. Um, but that doesn't work with ADHD. That just makes it worse. Okay, because you always have to remember that ADHD is a neurologic condition that is genetically passed. Okay, it is based on your neurotransmitters being just a little bit out of adjustment. That causes most of the difficulties, well, all of them as far as we know. And it's not, although it looks like even the temper tantrums are not a behavior problem, okay? But a lot of times ADHD looks like a behavior problem. Oh, you just don't care. Oh, you're just being careless. You're, this, that, and the other. That doesn't help anything, parents. Being real negative about this stuff is not the way to go. I mean, the deal we have to find ourselves with is we have to teach resilience to our kids. The resilience is just not giving up, basically. And it's real easy to give up when everybody's on you, when everybody's criticizing and complaining about you and how sloppy you are and how careless you are and how you don't care about all of those things. We can't allow ourselves to do that. We have got to be more positive, and we've got to find things and teach them okay, what did we learn from that kind of mindset? As in, you mess something up, you do something that didn't work out very well. What are you gonna do next time that's different? What did you learn from this experience? You have to have that kind of mindset as a parent, and understand that all of this stuff is based on neurotransmitters. I mean, and you can't. Punishing doesn't do anything good for that. And I mean, even people who train animals. I have a person I know who trains dogs to do those. Where they do the obstacle course and go through the tunnels and jump over all this stuff. She doesn't punish. She says, problem with punishment is you never know what you're going to get. They'll do something weird and it'll be probably worse than whatever it was they did originally. So you're better off just not punishing, reward what the behavior you want to see, but do not get all out of your mind and start yelling and screaming and punishing. It's just, it's one of those things that we cannot do as parents of ADHD kids. And we need to understand that we have to be totally focused on the ball. And criticism, we pay for criticism, and our kids do too. So we've got to be creative in finding things that we reinforce and reward. And ideally, none of this masking stuff gets carried too far, and we don't have to spend all of our time in the psychiatrist's waiting office, and we get to enjoy our kids. Okay, this is a little somber, but it's kind of a somber topic. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. My website is terrygingrasphd.com, and got the option of signing up there for a freebie session to see if coaching might work for you. And we will catch you next week.